Hi, my name is Chris Sepper. I run MedCityNews.com, and I want to welcome you to the inaugural edition of MedHeads. It's the gathering of MedCityNews.com's journalists to talk about some of the most important issues in the week that was in the business of healthcare innovation. So we started this video broadcast largely because we wanted to add more insight to the stories we're doing, and we wanted to deliver some of that insight, as much insight as possible, to you, the people who are dedicated to changing and transforming healthcare in a positive way. You're going to be joined every week by MedCity News journalists, and maybe every now and then we'll sneak in a guest to join us as well to talk about some of the big issues in there. I'm joined this week by Megan Akeshavan, who writes about early-stage innovations in healthcare for MedCity and life sciences. I have Stephanie Baum, who is kind of in the Andy Warhol version of video there. She writes about early-stage digital health. And then we have Nicole Oran, who writes about healthcare and pop culture and policy, and really just kind of covers any way that healthcare is being discussed in the greater culture. So again, we're gonna have some fun. We're gonna relax. You're gonna get to know us a little bit better, and hopefully we get to know you. And we will talk about some of the most important issues of the day. Any objections from the three of you from doing this? No, good. Okay. Listen, what I thought was interesting, and Kesh, we'll start with you. Pfizer was all over the place on our site this week. They were on it for a story about AARP teaming up with Pfizer, but you also wrote something really interesting about a new grant program. So why don't we just kick it off with grant programs, because there's nothing more riveting than grants.
So basically, Pfizer is kicking off a grant program to focus on a certain type of cholesterol-lowering drug. What's overall kind of interesting about it is that it's another just point in which Big Pharma is trying to partner with academia directly. So they're kind of cutting out all the middlemen to get from the earliest stage research to, something that will impact a drug that they're actually working on. So Pfizer is working on something called a monoclonal antibody type drug that is called a PCSK9 inhibitor. It's basically shutting down a gene that produces something that increases cholesterol levels in the bloodstream. And the thing that works, well, what's been showing up really well in clinical trials is that these PCSK9 inhibitors are far more effective than what the current standard of treatment, which are statins. So anyway, Pfizer's really far along. It's in phase 3 trials for 22,000 people. This is going to be a big drug should it make it to market. And there's a lot of competition out there too. Regeneron is working on a PCSK9 inhibitor, and so is Amgen. So there's a lot of work going on. So it's really interesting that Pfizer is launching a grant program that's asking scientists to do some of the homework around PCSK9. Like how does it work? Like what are the long-term effects of it? Anything that has to do with PCSK9, they're like, hey, we'll give you money, just do the research for us. And as I said, it's a mark of what a lot of big pharma are doing. GlaxoSmithKline is doing it. Eli Lilly is doing it. It's just a mark of the new order of pharmaceuticals.
But yeah, you and I actually were at Bio last year, and I thought it was interesting because this reminded me of GSK's DPOC program, right? Yeah. Try to cut out anybody that's going to get in the way, get in a faster way to commercialize and connect with the early stage innovators. I mean, is that a fair comparison, looking at this and what the GSK DPOC program?
Absolutely. This is actually part of Pfizer's Aspire program, which is called Advancing Science Through Pfizer Investigator Research Exchange. But it's the same thing as the DPOC program. It's going through investigators, and it was pissing off check transfer offices. Like UCLA got in a real, pennies were in a twist, I guess, over, the issues with taking that academic research and just going straight to academia. Like there are a lot. It's a bit fraught with tension from time to time.
Well, yeah. I mean, I would totally think that if there's any sector in innovation that could be Ubered out, right, like the taxi cab drivers, it's going to be a tech transfer office, which is in some ways unfair, right? They front the money and they get these researchers a home. They should want a piece of it. Now, maybe their piece is a little bit too big, or maybe, well, of course, what drug companies are always saying is that it's a little too slow, right? Europe has done a new way to license intellectual property, and people are always complaining about the slow process of getting IP out of universities. I mean, we're in an era where, if you're too slow, you're looking at the outside in. I mean, why wouldn't Pfizer just sponsor more, or GSK or others start to push them out? Might be interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a direct call to people who are working in the exact space that they need. It doesn't have to go through a specific tech transfer office. It's just an open call for someone who is interested. So.
But now, Stephanie, you just did a story this week that involved Pfizer, but it also involved AARP and United Healthcare, right? And it talked less about, it's not about molecules here, this is about digital health and mobile health. Tell us more about it.
Right. Well, I mean, it's really, it's called Project Catalyst, and it's really kind of the natural next step as far as the AARP sees it, of a series of innovation challenges they've been doing for the last few years, called Innovation at 50+. And these competitions have been designed to encourage entrepreneurs, health IT startups, mobile health startups, to think of to pitch products they've been developing that they think is ideal for the 50+ market in one of 9 areas that the AARP flagged up in a report they put out a couple of years ago called Health Innovation Frontiers. And these 9 areas, they're not specific to senior citizens, but they're relevant to senior citizens. They could include everything from weight management, medication adherence, and that sort of thing. So Project Catalyst is this follow-up, and it's the idea that a series of companies will have their products road tested by members of the 50+ demographic in a study run by Georgia Tech. And Pfizer is one of the sponsors, as is United Healthcare. And the idea is that this will run for 6 weeks, and the intention is to see if these products how easy it is for people in this demographic to use these products. What are the things, the strengths of these products? What are the weaknesses? Because the idea is, good design should be usable from anyone in there who's young to old. And if it's easier for them to use, if they can understand why, if they can see the benefits of it, then of course they're going to use it. And so the idea is that these studies are going to be run in each of the 9 areas ideally, but they're going to start off with sleep products. So tracking devices that track sleep and activity. And so at the end of 6 weeks, they're going to put together a study, write up the findings of the study, and I think the idea is to put them out in June.
No one, I think, has their tentacles in more ways to kind of get represented than AARP. But I got a question, like what's effective and what's not, right? We wrote about AARP getting in with Rock Health, right, and sponsoring them. And it already sponsored Startup Health, and then you did the post last week with Startup Health issuing a digital health study that was almost 50% like just kind of smooching the AARP demographic, right? I mean, you called bullshit a little bit on that study. Do people just love AARP because they throw their money around, or is anything really getting done with everybody that's involved with it?
Well, I think it's just, their point is that the 50+ market represents 100 million people. I shouldn't say market, say demographic. Represents 100 million people. Just because if you want people with multiple chronic conditions to be using medication adherence products, for example, most of the people that would be using those products fit into that category anyway. So, the argument is that these products should be good design. I'm sure any number of groups are welcome to sort of step up and say, here's a lot of money, why don't you road test these products and make sure they actually do what they're supposed to do for that demographic. The AARP is, supposedly they're putting their money where their mouth is and getting other people to do the same. So, if it's able to go beyond this study, then so much the better.
So tell me one thing that you think that all the AARP studies and investments, the one tangible change that AARP has brought about in digital health when it comes to medication adherence or anything else.
Well, I don't think I don't think it's going to be anything like, well, there's this representative device that the AARP wanted this to be developed, and it reflects all their aspirations and hopes. I think the fact that they've made this part of the conversation is pretty critical, and it looks like there's more of an interest in investing in that area, and there'll be continuing to be more studies that demonstrate whether these devices actually are do what they're supposed to do. But at the end of the day, there's probably going to be a certain number of these companies that aren't that interested, and they're just going to sell directly to the consumer. And if their products do well in these studies, then great. But if not, then it's probably not going to worry them that much. But it'll hopefully encourage more companies to develop products that are focused on that demographic.
All right, quick poll. I'll go first. Best product adjusted for senior citizens you've ever seen. I'll go first. I want to hear from everybody. Number one for me was that giant remote control with the huge buttons. Have you seen that? It's as big as an iPad, right? My mom and dad had that, and I thought it was the coolest thing. They thought I was making fun of them. They're like, oh, just wait till you get to our age. Like, the giant remote control, right? Oran.
You kind of stole mine, but I was going to say probably the cell phones that were, the screen is so huge and the text is so large that it just looks unnecessarily big, but I'm sure it's helpful.
Cash.
Well, now Nicole stole mine because San Diego. But I haven't covered digital health in a while, but I remember there have been some apps where you can do remote monitoring for elderly folks, medication adherence type stuff. I think that's interesting.
Steph.
The name of the company eludes me, but there was a company that was designed for people with Parkinson's disease, or people that had motion control issues, that would kind of steady it was utensils that were designed to kind of resist the shakiness factor. I thought that was, that's ideal because the majority of people that are diagnosed with Parkinson's fall into that demographic. So.
Look, we were all raised by old people, so we should all have an opinion on this, right? I mean, I think it's a shame that the only way that most of the people in technology are going to remember to take care of old people is that AARP has to shovel so much money at them. But I also think this, too. The majority of mobile health things, I mean, when you talk about medication adherence, we need an app to remind grandma to turn the pill. We just did a story, I think, about pill bottles with GPSs on them or something like that, right? Or is it that grandma doesn't have enough money, right? I mean, medication adherence is about too many pills or not enough money. And what I like about what you wrote about this week is that it's a real study to really look at the effectiveness of mobile and not just seeding, ideas thought of by people who are not taking this demographic into mind.
Sure.
It's kind of it's a commentary on the space. But I think that in most cases, most of this is making something more complicated than it's not. I mean, it's not home health care, which is probably going to be the ultimate for most seniors, to give them more independence. So Viagra is the greatest invention for seniors right now, right? I mean, it's ruthless. Stephanie, don't look at me like that.
Yeah.
Well, look, these are actually pretty substantive conversations, so I want to move on to something that's not as substantive, which is the doc fix. And I swear to you, the politicians are patting themselves on the back for this fantastic, job they did at working in a bipartisan manner. But I swear, in the last 7 days, we must have had 3 guest columns, our med citizens, who are physicians who just crapped all over this solution. And my father-in-law, who's an oncologist, read them, and he's like, I don't know any idea how this thing's going to work. And the love from these politicians keeps coming. Oran, you just posted something today. What was it? It was John Boehner and Titanic Gifts, right? And I love gifts. But
Sure do.
yeah, what is it?
Um, so yeah, so I guess the main thing that they're just so proud of and really talking about is the fact that it was bipartisan. And like, this is so exciting. They finally could get together and make a decision for something. And so, but they compared the success of at least passing through the House, because it hasn't hit the Senate yet, which it will soon, the bill, once they get back from their 2-week recess. So we don't know for sure what's going to happen. But they posted on John Boehner's office website like 10 different GIFs, so these like moving images, repeating moving images of clips from the Titanic, talking about how eventually national debt is going to flood even the biggest ships. So there's a picture of when the glass breaks in the ship, and that today's costs are the tip of the iceberg, and then there's an image of when they hit the iceberg. And so they really ran with this, and I for one think it's kind of hilarious, because they're clearly trying to maybe appeal to a certain demographic that normally isn't, I don't know, checking out John Boehner's website with the Titanic reference and with the whole GIF things. Like, I don't know why they would. It's funny to me that they would choose to approach this with that tactic, but it's entertaining, at least.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, the physicians. I mean, I think one of the posts we ran was from kind of a true partisan, borderline hack, right? But the other two were from a couple really reputable med bloggers, including Dr. Wes Fisher out of Chicago, and they just simply don't believe that the way that the federal government is going to shift revenue is going to work, and they also don't think that, basically, in this service model, the prediction is people, physicians will just stop taking as many Medicare patients. I don't know if Megan or Steph, you've looked at this at all, but it could be that the doctors are just cynical and will hate all change and are very conservative. But I'd love to hear your takes on anything you've read about the doc things. Well, Stephanie, yeah. It's either that or I'm going to talk about your Andy Warhol looking screen. So you got one choice or another.
I think doctors generally resent being road roughshod over. I mean, just like any industry that's being where regulation is increasing or regulation is changing, and they don't feel like they've been enough of part of the conversation. And but it's a difficult connection to make between Washington and technology and and what doctors are trying to accomplish in this current environment. They're seeing a lot of change and at once, and they're just being resistant to it, I guess, just out of habit. But I don't think that that's so different than any other industry that would face so many changes all at once. That's my philosophical take.
What she said. I plead the fifth on this because I am so enmeshed in pharmaceutical biotech.
I mean, it's a separate issue, but I mean, if I can use an example of a physician I was just talking with before we started this. It was a physician that, alongside a group of physicians, is developing an EHR overlay to improve communication between emergency room physicians and outpatient physicians. But one of the problems that he feels like they're addressing is the fact that so many of these communication tools that health IT vendors have developed haven't really factored in how a physician is actually using that technology, and they've almost been an afterthought. And this physician is very much, she's an ER physician, is very much advocating, user-focused design. I don't know if that's the technical term for it or not, but it's almost he sees himself as part of like an emerging trend that physicians, the only way that they're going to be able to get the tools that they need is to just, get in there and do it themselves. And there are a lot of physician entrepreneurs in digital health, so maybe it's not exactly a new trend, but maybe the way that they're going about this is new.
Well, let me transition, and Megan's story reminded me of this, and we just launched a research project this week. As I think everybody knows, MedCity got acquired by a company called Breaking Media, and one of the great strengths of Breaking Media is their research arm. And so we're going to be doing much more research, and one of the things that we've gotten already thematically through these first few months is continuing different kinds of funding opportunities. You know, the SEC just issued Regulation A+ that deals with crowdfunding. You know, there was a lot of conversation about venture philanthropy, but I think one of the most desirous sources of big dollars is corporate venture. But if you look at some of the usual suspects in corporate venture, the funded, or I mean not the corporate venture, but on how to find out information about venture capitalists, places like the Funded or places like MedCity or other places, there's not any in-depth reviews of who these people are and what they're like to deal with and how you handle them. And so we have started some outreach, and we've already got about 400 responses, by the way, in the first few hours of the survey being out, on, you know, who are the corporate venture funds you've dealt with, what do they like to deal with, and you know, I just, you know, I'll pass this a little bit to Meghana here, who obviously this is a life science survey. Can you talk about the phenomenon of investing there, and maybe with a little emphasis on corporate venture?
Corporate venture, yeah. Well, it's becoming a huge. Well, as you mentioned, it does tie into the story that I was talking about earlier, because larger corporations are trying to invest in early stage companies, so that ultimately they can potentially turn around, you know, what's been being conducted externally and bring it inside, and they have like a more direct, you know, influence on it. Spoke with someone from Baxter Ventures who said that, you know, the majority of the things that they invest in, they have a you know, an ultimate goal of bringing that into the company, and whether or not it happens or not, at least they can track the technology, they see how it works, but they don't have to, you know, do it internally, and you know, they have the capital to do it. These corporations are just changing so significantly. They're shedding employees in the R&D department, and they're freeing up capital, and they seem to be deploying it in a number of ways, and one of them is through, you know, corporate venture investment, and all of them are doing it. So.
No, I mean, when you think about what's happened with crowdfunding recently, and particularly this week's the SEC Regulation A+, right? And you have conversations on corporate VC. Well, one of the survey questions we ask is, where do you rank in order of importance the different kinds of investment opportunities that are there? And it'll be fascinating how badly people will want to get away from traditional venture, or how more interested they are in something like crowdfunding or venture philanthropy. I mean, it just seems that you can get a better valuation in some places than you can others, and so you know, I'd imagine a life science company that says, all right, I'm going to start with crowdfunding, and then I'm going to move to venture philanthropy, and then maybe I'm going to hopefully catch a corporate VC, and then move on to the banks where I can get a mezzanine round and a little mini IPO. I mean, the world can change here pretty quickly, and we hope that through this survey we're going to be able to get some stuff out of it.
Absolutely, and that A+ stuff is fascinating, just because you were saying go to a mini IPO, but with the new SEC rule changes, you know, people might not even need to do that mini IPO. They can crowdfund a whole bunch of money, wait 5 years, and then just go public, basically. Like, things are changing. Things are really, really changing.
Well, we have one more thing that we're going to talk about, speaking of change, before signing off here. The one reporter who is not on MedHeads today is Neil Vercel, who is a new addition to the team, which we're all really excited about. Neil is over a decade working at Health IT, and we picked him up just ahead of HIMSS. Neil, for most of the medical industry, is going to be well known only because of his knowledge, almost encyclopedic knowledge of Health IT. He's going to be kind of a Stephanie's complement. Stephanie, you write about early stage digital health. Neil will be writing about how some of the big players like health insurance companies and providers are going to be applying technologies, almost like the sellers and the buyers. Let's all say something nice about Neil. Nicole, you can go first.
Well, so far I've only connected with him online, and seen his face a little bit, and he's got a good sense of humor. So far he's putting up with us pretty well. So we are a feisty team of jokesters and just being silly, and I think he's gonna fit in well. So that's where I'm at with Neil so far.
Megan.
I'm just really impressed at his breadth of experience. He has written for everybody, it looks like, and so it's kind of nice to have someone with that depth of experience on our team. Especially because HIT is not like my pet subject, so I'm happy to be able to read it from somebody who is part of our group, and I expect I will learn a lot about the subject from him.
Stuff.
What I'm pretty excited about is that he has the depth of knowledge that comes from covering one industry over a 10-year period. I mean, I think if you look at any industry over a 10-year period, you'll notice that there are definitely periods where there's been a lot of acceleration as far as changes are concerned. And Neil has that kind of, I think he'll be a tremendous resource for us, particularly myself, looking at sort of where my beat ends and where his begins, and the kind of tensions that that entrepreneurs should be looking ahead at, that he can provide additional insight on.
Stephanie, your screen is magnifique. Like you're phasing in and out, like you're stuck in a transporter.
Well, I might be.
This is a great. Well, this is a great start to MedHeads, and kind of I joked in the post, right? We're in beta, and like the tech industry, we're not afraid to place faulty products into the market in the hope that you'll kind of work out the kinks for us. And so, this is round one, and we hope that we're going to develop a cadence and a theme here, and we hope that you've enjoyed it. And again, every week we'll be tuning in and getting together to talk about the week that was. So on behalf of Megan Akeshavan, Nicole Oran, and Stephanie Baum, I'm Chris Sepper, and said thank you for watching MedHeads. Bye, everybody.